Hello,
Hi.
Hello.
nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for agreeing to do this interview.
You're welcome. Sorry I was so busy with everything I wasn't able to reply as quickly.
It's okay. If you want, we can get started right away.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, awesome. So to start off, thank you for being here again. And if you don't mind, could you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your journey so far and about yourself and not just stamina?
So I'm Will Powers. I'm from Somerset, Kentucky, which is a pretty small town of about 7,000 people in southeastern Kentucky. I went to Somerset High School. It's a school like 500 people, so really small background. I started getting into activism and advocacy work around my sophomore year of high school, mainly focused around education and education equity. I was asked to serve on the student advisory board for the Commissioner of Education in Kentucky. And through that, I really got involved in education policy work at that level and other levels, which I'm sure we'll talk about further on in the interview. Um, I now go to Occidental College in Los Angeles. So right now I'm in this weird transition period where all my network and all my connections are in Kentucky, and I'm trying to bring the work over that I was doing in Kentucky and in the South over to California. It's a lot harder than I expected, but I've been able to work with Congressman Brad Sherman out here and intern with him and some other really great organizations out here. And I guess on a personal note, I absolutely love LA. It's amazing. It's definitely a shock going from a city of 7,000 people to a city of like 7 million people, but definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made. And now I feel like a personal advocate of people in small towns and saying, go reach for your dreams, go to a big city, go to a big school. It's definitely worth it.
Thank you for that. My name's Trisha. And so could you just talk a little bit about how you got started with StAMINA and what really inspired creating this organization? I know you discussed a little bit, but was there like a defining moment that you had where it kind of just sparked for you?
Yeah, so like I said, I was on the Commissioner of Education Student Advisory Council, and Allison Tu, who is one of the co-founders of StAMINA and who had the original idea for StAMINA, goes to DuPont Manual in Louisville, which is a school about 3 hours away from me. So she came to the student advisory meeting and presented this idea for a nonprofit that she had, which was based on a club that she had founded in her school, DuPont Manual. And she really noticed that the academic load in her school was so heavy on students that it was causing a lot of stress and mental health crises in the students at DuPont Manual. So she presented this idea and asked if anyone would want to help her transition this club that was also new into an organization. And I really had no idea how would I do that. I have no expertise. I have no real qualifications. This advisory council was like me stepping out of my comfort zone already. So afterwards, I thought about it and I shot her an email and just said, I'd love to meet with you. And so I met with her, and I remember going to a coffee shop to meet with her for some reason online, despite me being able to do that from my house if I wanted to. And it was so loud in there and I could barely hear anything she was saying. But from that meeting, I mean, we made an amazing connection, and we've been working together for 3.5 years with another person who went to school with me, Sufia Ahmed, who is one of our co-founders as well. And really, a lot of people always ask me, what's the motivation for it? You know, did you have something personal that happened? And I don't think so. I don't think I can point to any one specific instance that happened in my life that really sparked this passion for mental health activism. But I think it was a long process that continued throughout my work with StAMINA, of realizing how important mental health is to not only me, but my peers, my family, my friends. And so, you know, it was a long process of founding this organization. It was a long process of getting grant money, doing research, and then applying that research. But you know, I couldn't have done it without Allison. I couldn't have done it without Sophia and the amazing people that we worked with. And it's been great working with them.
Thank you for that. So I was a little curious about more about StAMINA. So what does StAMINA do, and how when I was researching about it, I came across a three-pronged plan: learn, build, and act. And how does that kind of play into your model for your organization?
Yeah, so we wanted to have a unique approach about mental health awareness, because there are a lot of already existing organizations that do mental health awareness work. And we already thought that we could distinguish ourselves by being a student-run organization, but we also wanted to embark on this three-pronged approach, which the first one was learn. And our learn phase was our research study phase. We partnered with the University of Louisville, hired a research assistant, and we were able to do this because we got a grant from General Electric. We used that money to travel around the state. We did 10 focus groups in urban and rural schools. We sat down with over 20 mental health professionals, whether they be psychiatrists or people like Dr. Stephen Pruitt, who was our research assistant and professor at the University of Louisville. We sat down with parents of students in those schools that were both rural and urban, and we just wanted to get a sense of what mental health is like in Kentucky schools and what resources were there, what resources weren't there, what's working and what's not working. So we finished that after about 6 months of traveling around the state, and we had about 70 hours of audio that we had to sit and transcribe, which was really painstaking, but worth it. It took us a little bit to do that. And finally, we had transcribed all of it and had our research report, which is up on our website. And with this, we kind of moved on to our build and our act phase. With our research, we really wanted to build a coalition of partners and allies in our mental health work that could help us advance the causes and help us work in the action phase, which would come later on. And through our build phase, we've been able to work with some really amazing people like State Representative Attica Scott in Kentucky, the now governor, but then Attorney General Andy Beshear, the Lieutenant Governor Janine Hampton. We worked with Representative AOC. We worked with Patrick Kennedy and the Kennedy Foundation, and some really amazing people like that. And our main sponsor, the Kentuckiana Health Collaborative, who has been with us this entire time and really helped guide us through these rough waters for especially young people that are trying to get involved in this kind of work. And then we moved on to our action phase, which we knew that we couldn't just gather this research and then sit down and say, well, we've got the research, we're done now. We wanted to do something with our findings. And at first, that was our StAMINA conferences that we held, our youth summits. We held our first one, I think, March 2018, so almost 3 years ago. And we engaged over 70 youth in Louisville, Kentucky at the Olmsted, which is a beautiful venue. And we sat down and we had 3 speakers that talked about their mental health experiences. They were really powerful speakers. We had an hour and a half of mental health activities, like mental health bingo sheets that people were able to make, self-care kits that had in bath bombs and cookies, things from local sponsors around Louisville. We had this mental health painting where everyone would put a thumbprint in a brain area of a head. That was the brain of StAMINA, and it was everyone's collective thumbprints together. And at the end of it, I mean, we were really, really excited. It was the first thing that we'd ever pulled off. We had KET there, who is our Kentucky Education Television, that was able to film everything. And it was mainly, we wanted to raise awareness and we wanted to bring people together in a safe space that you can talk about your mental health experiences. You could talk about what worries you and what stresses you, and how we can work together to make sure that as a community, we're putting our mental health first and our friends' mental health first as well. So that was our action phase at first, and it moved on to a lot of different things. It was speaking at conferences around the state and around the country. It was developing our first mental health podcast called Brainwaves, where we sat down with students from across Kentucky and talked about their mental health. We sat down with state representatives, and we sat down with mental health professionals. But I think one of the thing that we're most proud of is our lobbying for Senate Bill 1 in Kentucky. Senate Bill 1 was the flagship bipartisan bill in the Kentucky legislature in 2019, in response to the Marshall County shootings in Marshall County, Kentucky, that tragically took the lives of 2 students in that school. And Kentucky was really crying out at that moment, and the nation was, for school safety bills. And we wanted to make sure that this was an opportunity and not something that was going to take us backwards, like a bill that would arm teachers or one that would put in metal detectors in schools. We wanted this to be something that focused on soft measures in schools rather than these hard measures that we had seen. So we worked with Republican legislators in Kentucky to write a bill that would not implement any of these hard measures, and rather implemented things like trauma-informed care, and implemented a mandate that schools would have 1 mental health professional per 1,500 students, which is something we tried to get passed in the previous legislative session. And it was taken up in a vote, and it was passed 97-3. So we had really great bipartisan support. And I will say that one of the things that, if I could go back and I could change it, and something that we want to acknowledge as an organization, is the bill did add funding for school resource officers. And looking back at that, that's not something that we would put in that bill. That's not something that we necessarily support, and an increased police presence in school, just looking at the mental health impact of that. But beyond that, it was something that we had accomplished in our action phase. And as well as that, the last thing, Ocean, our mental health conversation cards, we developed. They're these really beautiful cards. They're on our website as well, that I didn't design. I have no graphic design talent at all, but we had these amazing artists on our team design these cards that were supposed to be mental health conversation starters. And we plan on sending them out to counseling firms, sending them out to schools around the state and around the country, so that young people can start mental health conversations in really easy ways like that.
I mean, I'm in awe of everything you just described as an organization, because personally, like Orchid, we're trying to make an impact, and we know from firsthand experience how difficult that can be. So hearing your experience, everything that StAMINA has done for Kentucky and the citizens, people living in Kentucky, that's really inspiring. And so why do you feel, obviously StAMINA is an organization local to found in Kentucky and kind of focuses on people there. Why do you feel like organizations like StAMINA are something necessary to be found across the country and in society in general?
Yeah, I think mental health is so important everywhere in this country, everywhere in the world, and in every society. And in Kentucky, it was especially important for us to be advancing this cause, because we've seen that it's something that's been neglected in Kentucky. The rates of suicide in young people in Kentucky are astronomically higher than the national average. And that's the case for a lot of the South. And there are so many reasons for that. And we could dive so deep into the reasons for that. But we don't need to do that right now. We don't have enough time, and I don't know enough about it. But everywhere in the country, I mean, traveling out here to Los Angeles for school, I remember being so struck by how many people in the first week that I had realized were struggling mentally with so many different things. And it was such a different case here. People were a lot more open about how they were feeling as compared to Kentucky. And every single place, every single community within a state and communities within a community have so many different mental health needs. And that's what we want to portray, is that there is not a blanket answer to this. I can't take the research that I've done in Kentucky and then come out here and say, okay, well, I'm going to implement the exact same things that I tried in Kentucky. But I think overall the main goal is still there, and that is mental health wellness, and it's how you get to that goal. And, I am passionate about it, and I want young people to have the resources to find out how to get to that overall goal that is mental health wellness in their communities. And we work as an organization to provide the resources to young people in their communities to be able to get to that goal. And, it's taken a lot of learning from us as well. We have to learn, what are the best practices to implement these kind of changes in different communities, just beyond the ones that we may know and be familiar with. But like I said, I think at the end of the day, it is so, so important to everyone, no matter who you are and no matter where you're from or what you look like, that you have the resources available to you to be healthy mentally, and you have the support around you that encourages you daily to work on your mental health wellness, to work on being there present in the moment and being healthy, whether that is just mentally, whether that's physically, emotionally. And that's something that we talk about all the time, that it is really startling that the stigma around mental health has taken such a toll on young people. And that's what we wanted to break down most, is this stigma. And I think it's prevalent everywhere. And I think that's one of the main reasons we see that the suicide rate in Kentucky is so high, and we see in the South that it is so high. There's this stigma that somehow you're weak, somehow you're less of a man if you are struggling with these mental health crises. And that's something that we've spent so much time trying to break down. I mean, if I tripped and fell outside and cut my knee and I was at school, I wouldn't be afraid to go to the nurse and ask for a Band-Aid. But if I'm struggling with a mental health crisis, why am I then scared to go ask for help? And we need to eliminate that stigma. We need to say that physical health is just as important as mental, and vice versa, and make sure these things are on an equal playing field wherever we are in the country.
I think I definitely agree with you. Unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges in mental health treatment is the stigma that's surrounding it, that kind of hinders a lot of people from getting the help that they need. But considering current circumstances with the pandemic and COVID-19 and everything, that poses a new challenge in itself. How has StAMINA, in a way, played a part in this pandemic to kind of help people with their mental illness?
Yeah, so we have been we've been in a very, very interesting place as an organization, just transitioning into what we looked like post graduation of high school. And it has been difficult. I'll be completely candid about that. It's very difficult to have an organization lose the three people who were mainly running it. We had some amazing people that were below us, about 20 people that had worked at a lower level. But when you have your three leaders, one goes to Boston, another stays in Kentucky, and then one goes to California, it's hard to have that organizational capacity to continue to do the work that you're doing at a really high level, and especially with COVID going on. So we plan on partnering with the Pritchard Committee Student Voice Team in Kentucky and letting them really take control of a lot of the resources that we had, so this work can continue in Kentucky. Because one of the main things we realized transitioning as an organization is a lot of our work will not have the same impact if we try to stretch our resources through 3 states or through 50 states. And we want to be practical. At the end of the day, we want to help as many people as we can, rather than just trying to be as big as an organization as we can. And that means staying in Kentucky right now. And that's what's best for us. So it's working with existing organizations in Kentucky that are doing some pretty amazing work, especially in the times of COVID-19. And that means working with the Pritchard Student Voice Team. And right now we want to really give them ownership of the Ocean Conversation cards, so they can implement those in the school climate work that they're doing. And I'm not sure entirely what their intentions are once they have a lot of the research and the resources that we're going to hand over to them. But I know that they are a really, really capable organization. I think really at the forefront of student voice in this country, which a lot of people are so shocked that this organization comes out of Kentucky. But I'm telling you, like, these are the best of the best. They're absolutely amazing. They're doing incredible work with the Pritchard Student Voice team, and I'm excited to see what they do with the resources we're able to provide them.
Yeah, I mean, change is extremely difficult, and especially like you were saying, when all your three leaders, you're going to different colleges, and like you said, the distance is an issue. So I completely understand. And I find the practicality of this, of how you guys look at the situation, really interesting, because I know, like you said, so many people would be like, hey, we want to branch out, we want to make this organization as big as possible. But the fact that you chose to stick to Kentucky and stay with your roots shows that it's not about the name or the fame that the organization gets you. It's more about really making the biggest impact you can. And I believe early on, when we asked you about just yourself and how it's been, you were talking about LA and the issues you face bringing that work, kind of translating that work over from Kentucky to LA. Would you mind like discussing that a bit more, going into a bit more depth for us?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the biggest parts of starting youth activism is having a network, and people really, really underestimate, including me, moving out here, how important having a network is. And so coming out here and being completely in the dark in relation to any connections professionally was something that I wasn't prepared for, something that I don't even really know how you prepare for as a young person. But it took me off guard, and I'll be honest, I was really not. I was thinking, oh, I'm just going to completely bring this work over here. I'll start a club within the school or something like that. But it took us at least a year to build that base framework in Kentucky, and we were able to kind of speed that process up because of the existing connections that we had. And really, I just found I didn't have the time because I was a new college student and I was getting acclimated to being a college student completely in a completely different environment. And I was alone here. I couldn't necessarily call on Allison or Sophia to do a lot of the work that I needed them to be doing. And it was difficult. And I think it took us a while to completely acknowledge that we couldn't continue to do that work at that level in these three different states, and that we needed to have a completely different approach. And I think that's something really, really important for young people. And it was a mental health decision too. It was saying, you know, this isn't healthy. We can't push ourselves to the absolute limit in our freshman first semester of college and say, we're going to bring this organization and all its flaws and all its glory into each of our colleges and try to grow it and have a statewide chapter in California and have one in Massachusetts and continue the work in Kentucky, when a lot of the people, we just didn't have the organizational capacity to be doing that work. And, you know, we started trying to at first bring this work to a national level, and we started with the Youth Mental Health Bill of Rights, which was this Bill of Rights, so to speak, talking about the 5 rights that students should have in regards to their mental health. And it was things like they deserve access to a mental health professional in their schools, a safe and healthy environment mentally and physically. And we worked trying to get presidential and Senate candidates to sign on to this Youth Mental Health Bill of Rights. And at first, it was great. We were working with Amy Klobuchar, running for president, and other candidates running for president, John Hickenlooper, who then ran for Senate. But we realized that work wasn't necessarily meaningful. We were doing that work to grow a brand nationally. It was something that, yes, these are these vague promises that these legislators are promising to support, but there was no real accountability that we could hold them to, and there was no real change happening immediately from it. It was, if I win this race, I will then pledge to sort of implement these 5 youth mental health rights that you have indicated in. So we just thought, you know, we have to do meaningful work. This just felt phony. And that's when we came to the decision. And it was relatively recently that, you know, we need to go back to our roots. We need to go back to Kentucky. That's where we're from. That's where our research is from. That's where we have the connections. That's where we know people can get this work done because we've done it before. And so a lot of the amazing people that had worked at a lower level than us that are still in Kentucky and still in high school there are going to continue doing this work. And I'm sure they have absolutely amazing plans of how to do that. And so we're really excited to see that. But definitely, as a youth organization, transitioning statewide is definitely something that you have to be prepared for. And when I say prepared, I mean like even more prepared than prepared means. It's difficult, and I couldn't do it, and we couldn't figure out a way to get through that barrier. But I think it's something that a lot of people can get through, and I'm sure a lot of young people are a lot more well versed in doing this work than I am. So kudos to those people.
I think that's really great, as Trisha said, that you guys decided to focus on kind of having a more meaningful purpose and expanding. To kind of end this interview, what has been your favorite aspect of working on StAMINA? And if you have any parting message for the world or for our audience, what would it be?
The best part, I think, I could be cheesy and I could say meeting the people that I've met through it. I think that of course has been absolutely amazing to work with Allison, to work with Sophia, and work with the amazing people that I have. I mean, these connections, while they're not glamorous, I'm sure they will be. I'm sure Allison or Sophia could end up being the president one day if they wanted to. They're incredible, but they're just really down to earth people focused on the exact same goal. And I think it's incredible meeting people that have this burning passion for the same thing that you have, to an extent that they're willing to do this work day in and day out throughout college, throughout high school. I mean, we would meet like 3 times a week, and it would be like 9 p.m. It would be high school. We had had a bunch of work to do, and we would sit and we would talk. We would do our normal meeting, and then, you know, the meeting would end and we would say, well, we could stay and talk a little bit more. And so we would sit and we'd talk for hours and hours and hours just about life and just about issues in general, whether they be around mental health or whether they just be about high school. And, you know, it was incredible making those connections. They last a lifetime, and that's what oops, sorry. I got a phone call on the Mac. But anyway, they last a lifetime, and I think that's what I'm really most excited about. But I think also what is really, really pressing, I think, is the issue of mental health in Kentucky, and laying the groundwork, hopefully, for future mental health organizations that can do this work beyond what we're doing, even at a higher level, and maybe take some of the lessons that we've learned and implement those into the work that they're doing. And I guess if I have a parting message, it is that mental health matters, and mental health in high school education is something that we need to take seriously as a country, and education as a whole is something we need to take seriously. You know, a lot of the work that I do now is around education equity, and I think that directly plays into mental health. I mean, you have to look at mental health in schools to have a healthy and well-educated school. And I think that's something that we've made the connection in Kentucky to get people really serious about mental health, and saying that these students can't learn to their full capacity. These people cannot be future employers at the fullest, or employees or employers at the fullest capacity, if their mental health is not there. And, you know, there is a real world connection. I think there's so often this idea that mental health is the abstract rather than what is actually going on in the real world, but it is what is going on in the real world. And mental health has such a big impact on every single thing in your life. It impacts our economy. I mean, if you have 50% of the workforce that is not mentally healthy, you have a decreased output of your workforce. And, you know, in a capitalist society that values those things, that has a really big impact on this country. And I think beyond that, on a human level, which is what we try to connect people with, beyond just a monetary or economic value, it's a human thing. Every single life matters, every single one. And I think that's something that this COVID pandemic should bring out in us. And we should be thinking about that. Every 180,000 people that have died this year from COVID, and the thousands and thousands of young people that die every year, and older people that die from suicide or mental health illnesses, those people matter. And they have stories, they have lives, they have goals, and they have dreams. And we owe it to ourselves and our mental health well-being. And we also owe it to our peers, to our family, and to our friends to be serious about mental health, whether we are just a student or whether we're a teacher, a policymaker, or whatever. Mental health matters. And we have to understand that as a society if we want to grow and change as a society to meet our fullest goals.
I mean, you couldn't be more right. Like you said, mental health matters. And you really, that was really inspiring, I guess, like the way you said it. Like that was such a great message to send. Thank you for talking to us and giving us and our audience a bit more insight into your journey and StAMINA's journey, and really highlighting the impact that foundations and organizations can have in the healthcare field and just mental health and in education. Like StAMINA is unique in the way it brings all these different like kind of separate areas together, the education system and mental health. This was extremely educational, and I know that I and Aksa, we definitely enjoyed having you here, and I hope you had some fun as well. Have a great day, and we would love to speak with you again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I hope you have a great day, and this was great. Thank you all.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.